I'm gonna show you how to make homemade croissants. These do take a long time to make, like 1.5 to 3 days, but it's well worth it at the end. The first thing you need to do is make the dough. I like to use a food processor because it's really fast and easy. So first add in the instant dry yeast, then the flour, sugar, and salt, and mix the dry ingredients until combined. Then add in the warm milk and mix it until a dough forms. Turn the dough out onto a lightly floured surface and just knead it until it forms a smooth ball. It won't take long. Place the dough into a greased bowl, cover it in plastic wrap, and refrigerate for at least 6 hours, but overnight is best. Next, you need to make a butter layer, and to do that, draw a 4 by 8 inch rectangle onto a sheet of parchment paper, flip it over so the markings don't get onto the butter, and place the cold cubed butter onto the rectangle that you made. Overlap them if necessary. Then place another sheet of parchment paper over the top and flip the whole thing over so you can see the rectangle that you drew. And use a rolling pin to flatten it out into one piece. It's okay if it goes over the lines. We'll fix that in just a minute. Then flip it over again. Peel off the top sheet of parchment paper and trim any butter that has come over the lines, and then put them onto the center on top. Then place the parchment paper back on top and flip it over again and gently roll it out to flatten it again into one piece. Trim any butter that has gone over the lines again if necessary. And place the whole thing into the fridge for half an hour to an hour. Once your dough has risen, take it out of the fridge and deflate it a little bit. And lightly flour your work surface and roll the dough out to an 8 by 16 inch rectangle. Make sure you brush off any excess flour using a pastry brush, because that will prevent you from getting flaky layers in your croissants. Place the butter square into the center of the dough and fold the edges into the middle. Make sure you brush off any excess flour, then fold the top and the bottom towards the middle as well. Again, brush off any excess flour, then flip the dough over. Again, brushing off any excess flour. If the dough still feels really cold at this point, proceed to the next step. If not, wrap it in plastic wrap and refrigerate it for 30 minutes. You do not want the butter to soften too much, or it will be really hard to work with the dough, so you need to keep it really cold. It's best to make these during the winter months, or else you may have to put it in the fridge more often. Roll the dough out to a 10 by 24 inch rectangle, adding more flour if the dough is sticking. Fold one end of the dough towards the middle, brush off any excess flour, then fold the other end towards the middle. Again, brush off any excess flour. Then fold the dough in half along the seams, again brushing off any excess flour. Wrap the dough in plastic wrap and refrigerate it for 30 minutes. Remember, you want to keep the butter cold. Then repeat the process again. Roll the dough out to 10 by 24 inch rectangle. Fold it just like I showed. Brush off any excess flour. And then wrap it in plastic wrap and refrigerate it for 30 minutes. Then repeat the process again. And this time when you put the dough into the fridge, leave it in the fridge overnight. Then once your dough has been chilling in the fridge overnight, place it onto a well-floured surface and roll it out to a 10 by 50 inch rectangle this time. If you don't have as much counter space, you can cut the dough in half and roll it into a 10 by 25 inch rectangle, and just keep the other half wrapped in plastic wrap and in the fridge while you're working on the first half. Then what I do is I use a cake pop stick that I cut to be 5 inches and then use it to mark every 5 inches of dough. Then use a long knife to cut those marks all the way across the width of the dough. Then cut the strips of dough diagonally from the top left corner to the bottom right corner. Then from the wider end, roll it up all the way to the top. Then pinch the two ends together to help keep their shape. And continue doing that for the rest of your croissants. This recipe will make 20 croissants. Then place the croissants onto 2 trays that have been lined with parchment paper. I'm using a silicone mat for one of them. Then cover them in a clean towel and let them rise in a warm place for 1 to 2 hours. Meanwhile, preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Then after 1 to 2 hours, brush the tops of the croissants with a bit of egg wash, which is 1 egg that has been beaten with 1 tablespoon of milk. Then place the croissants into the oven for about 18 to 20 minutes. Make sure to rotate them halfway through and switch the oven racks so they bake evenly. Then once they're done, remove them from the oven and let them cool slightly. And that's how to make homemade croissants. These are best eaten within a day, but if you happen to have a lot of leftovers, you can freeze them and they will last for up to a month. And just take them out and heat them in the microwave and enjoy.